Hello, sports fans. It is Tuesday, January the 7th, the year 2014. And as usual, a lot to get to in the sports world, so let's get it going right now as the Florida State Seminoles rally and beat the Auburn Tigers 34-31 in the Rose Bowl to win the national title. And once again, we are joined by Mr. Joe Spano from Sirius Satellite Radio by way of the Sports Bylines. Joe, welcome.
Mike, it's great to be back. Glad to see you're feeling a little better.
Slightly.
I know you're not all the way back, but we'll manage to labor our way through it, break down the BCS title game, get into some of the other notable bowl matchups that are worth talking about. There weren't that many from this past bowl season.
No.
It wasn't a thrilling one.
No.
And then we'll get everybody caught up on the NFL playoffs and take a look at what we're going to see this weekend in divisional round play.
Absolutely. I think this was the second best title game since the BCS started. I think the Texas-USC game was the best game. Texas was the underdog. They won that national title with Mac Brown. I think this was the second most exciting game. This was a very exciting national championship game.
In the BCS era, no question about it. This definitely was number two. That USC-Texas game was definitely number one. And off the air, we talked about the fact that that was one where the underdog actually won.
Right.
And there really was that one guy that put his team on his back and willed them the victory, and that was one Vince Young. So that really was the best title game of the BCS
Absolutely.
era. This one was definitely right there, a definite number two, and, you know, definitely a terrific game that had a little bit of everything. Some moments of defense, lots of offense, lots of excitement, being won in the bitter end on the final play. That's what football is all about. You know, you get just enough offense, a little bit of defense, drama, close, comeback. It was a terrific game with a lot of stories.
And terrific that the fans made it out there from both sides, by the way. You see all the Auburn and Florida State fans that made it out to the Rose Bowl?
Both teams traveled exceptionally well and gave you a rambunctious, lively crowd. Weather was great. And really, you know, at halftime you looked at this game and you said, okay, this one doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be one for the ages.
No, it didn't.
But you did have that glimmer of hope because Florida State puts up the late score. And you said, okay, they're just close enough to make this a game. And Auburn left some points on the field so we could have a very interesting second half, which is what we got. And that's how you get, you know, that with everything else gives you the second greatest title game in the BCS era.
Absolutely. Let's go through a little bit of it right now.
Sure.
The first half, Auburn was dominating on both sides of the ball. Florida State was making a ton of mistakes, false starts, drop passes. Winston looked lost. Auburn was playing great defense and offense. Auburn is actually up 21-3 in this game in the second quarter, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Is this the same Florida State team I've watched all year? Then I was starting to question the ACC.
And you start to question the strength of that schedule.
Right.
I mean, they had an SOS in the 60s. You know, but when you looked at their schedule, I thought SOS was a little deceiving. They did play some good opposition. You know, hey, they played Clemson.
At Clemson.
You know, at Clemson. You know, you look, Clemson had a couple of rough patches, but they were a top 10 team most of the year.
They were.
They're a quality team. That's a quality win in dominating fashion. I know by the time Florida State got a hold of Miami, there was very little left.
Right.
But, you know, when you look at Florida State's overall schedule, I think it's a little better than that SOS of in the 60s would indicate. And, you know, obviously as you're watching this game unfold and Auburn dominate, you started to doubt that because you said, well, we had questions about Florida's quality of opposition, the ACC. We all know how good the SEC is. We all knew how strong Auburn's schedule was. And they jump out to the 21-3 lead. You start saying to yourself, the SEC's at it again.
Right.
And they really do own college football without even a challenge.
Right. Brett Musburger, during the telecast, was calling it a blowout at one point. He was saying it was a blowout, and he quickly backtracked on that and said, well, the game's not over yet, but he was ready to call it a blowout.
He would have continued to say that if Catherine Webb was there, because he would have had something to talk about.
Right,
it was
exactly.
But he didn't have a girl to spotlight on.
Right.
So he kind of, you know, needed to backtrack off of that blowout thing because, and you know, your producer gets in your ear pretty quickly when you start saying that. It's like, Brent, don't say that. You're getting people to turn off their television sets,
right,
and go watch something else. We don't want them to do that. So be careful in the words you choose.
Now at 21-3, I never thought Florida State was out of the game. Never in a million years did I think they were out of the game. Then to the point you made, right before the half, Florida State is down 21-3. They run a fake punt. Then Winston has a huge run, sets up the touchdown, makes it 21-10 right before the half. And how many times have we said it? Those scores right before the half are very, very important.
Especially when you're going to get the ball back to start the second half, which Florida State didn't capitalize on.
They did not.
And you started looking at that and saying, well, they're going to have an uphill battle to come back from here. Had they capitalized on getting the ball to start the second half, you would have been instantly convinced that we were going to have a game on our hands. At that point, when they had to punt the ball back to Auburn, you said, well, they've got an uphill battle ahead of them.
Right.
And when you were looking at it from an Auburn perspective, you said, okay, we've got this game in control. We could have had it more control. We did leave a lot of points on the field in the first half.
Right.
And we're lucky that we've been able to dominate Florida State the way we have because we've got this game pretty well under wraps, at least at that point.
Right.
And let's go back and look at that first half. There was the missed field goal.
Which they should have made. That is a chippy field goal. You have to
He's
make
a good kicker.
You have to make
this
that.
This is a veteran quality kicker. This is not one of those situations where you're a top team with one of those freshman kickers that struggled all year. He's a very good kicker, Auburn's kicker. So for him to miss that short field goal shocked me. That and the Nick Marshall bad throw on the opening possession.
That should have been a touchdown.
Auburn had a chance to really set the tone.
Right.
That was a brilliant play call by Gus Malzahn. There was a receiver wide, and when I say wide open,
running down the middle of the field, no one around.
If that pass is on point at all,
and I still think he should have caught it.
He should have.
Right.
It was a bad throw, but he got his hands on it. It was a catchable pass. But if it's on target, and Nick Marshall makes a good throw, that's a touchdown that truly sets an early tone for this game. So I think when Auburn starts to look back at this football game, their big regret is going to be the points they left on the field. Because I think in many ways that's what cost them this game.
They're up 21-10 at the half, but they could easily have 10 more points in this game. Easily. I couldn't believe they got fooled.
And 31-10, Florida State wasn't coming back.
Totally different than 21-10.
We're having a different discussion about the dominance of the SEC and how they are college football and how Florida State was a paper tiger as Auburn corralled and controlled Florida State by a fairly wide margin because those 10 points change everything.
Absolutely. I was actually surprised Auburn fell for the fake punt because I'm sitting there going,
well-designed fake. This wasn't just snapping it to the up back and having them run.
Right.
There was a reverse action in there and everything, and everybody sucked in, and there was a lot of real estate for the fake punt.
I'm sitting there at 21-3 going, they're around midfield. They might run a fake here. I'm saying this in my own mind, and sure enough, they ran it. Made the big first down. Then Winston had the huge run. After that, they get into the end zone. Really big score.
And that was a mistake by the special teams coach. Let's give Jimbo Fisher and his staff a lot of credit. It was a brilliantly designed fake. But if you noticed, Auburn wasn't in punt safe, which is the formation that you're in a lot in that situation where if the fake does come, you have something of a base defense in there that's ready for it, along with one guy deep to return the punt, or at least fair catch the punt, so it can't roll and put you in terrible field position. Auburn wasn't set for the fake, and that really hurt them because that fake leading to that score put Florida State, you can't necessarily say back in the game, but it kept them from getting blown out.
Right.
And then we saw what happened going forward.
It stopped the bleeding. And to me, if you're Auburn there, forget about the punt return. Forget about field position. Make sure they don't run a fake there and get momentum in the game. The last thing you wanted was a change of momentum there, and that's exactly what you got. So I was actually surprised Auburn wasn't in safe mode there, but like you said, brilliant play call by Florida State. Very gutsy call at that stage of the game, too. And Fisher said they needed something there to get them going.
Yeah, he did say that in the post-game press conference where he talked about we needed something, or one of the interviews.
Right.
And, there was so much going on. But he did say we needed something here. We were dead.
Right.
You know, we were the walking dead out there, and we were on our way to getting blown out.
Right.
So a good job of feeling the pulse of his team by Jimbo Fisher and taking a shot. If it doesn't work, we're having a different discussion today.
All right, so we're at 21-10. You still like what Auburn's done in the first half. I mean,
and you like them forcing the punt off of the opening possession in the second half. And you still feel comfortable that this is Auburn's game.
Right.
You've watched them do so. You've watched them get out to a 21-10 lead in a way you didn't expect. Nick Marshall, outside of one bad throw, was throwing the ball very well, and the running game was really setting up their passing game, and they were featuring their passing game in the first half, which is not something you necessarily expected from the Auburn Tigers.
No, absolutely not. Now in the third quarter, Florida State kicks a field goal, makes it 21-13. Auburn's offense in the third quarter starts to slow down. Florida State's defense starts to pick it up, and you feel like they're starting to take over the game. Auburn's not doing much at all, but still, after 3 quarters, you look up and Auburn is still winning 21-13. You still think
Florida State has that one drive and it bogs down.
Right.
And again, a lot of the same thing you're saying. I'm saying to myself, man, they can't finish this drive. They're kicking another field goal. It's 21-13. I know it's only a one-possession game, but Florida's just bogging down, kicking field goals. I know Auburn's not doing much, but if they can get it going again, they can put this one away.
No, absolutely. So you're still, if you're Auburn, you love the position you're in. Then the fourth quarter starts. Marshall throws the bad interception. Very bad interception.
Bad read. Bad read.
Should never have thrown the ball. Florida State actually fumbles on the play, but they recover it. I thought, Musburger never mentioned this in the telecast, that should have been a penalty on Auburn. They leg whipped
the tackle was a leg whip, and that should have been a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct
Musburger
penalty.
and Herbstreit never mentioned it on the broadcast. They were going on and on about the great recovery, and he saved Florida State. Should have been a penalty on Auburn for sure.
Tackle was a trip.
He definitely tripped him, but a terrible pass by Marshall there.
He made a couple of bad reads in the second half. There was a pass down the sideline in the second half. It didn't result in anything, but it was just a bad read. He was trying to fit something in where there was no place to put the football.
Right.
So there were a couple of those bad reads in the second half. Nick Marshall, as a quarterback, is a great athlete. He does have a live arm, but his skills at reading defenses, some of the touch passes, and some of the other things are still very rudimentary. Remember, this is a guy who on the major college level started out at Georgia as a cornerback.
Right.
Not a quarterback.
Right.
So he doesn't have a lot of experience playing the position. As an athlete, he's a great fit for this very special Gus Malzahn system, but in realities, when forced to pass a lot, or when he passes a lot, you'll get some situations where he makes bad reads or bad throws like we saw in the first half, where you call a brilliant play, get a guy with miles of real estate all to himself, and you kind of throw it at his feet.
Right. So now it's 21-13 off the bad interception. Florida State goes right down the field and scores. Florida State on the touchdown gets a penalty for taunting the Auburn sidelines, which was just a mindless penalty because now they can't go for 2 to tie the game. They got to kick the extra point there to make it 21-20. Just a mindless penalty. I don't know what in the world he's doing there. And
stupid taunting penalty.
Absolutely.
This is the immaturity of college, of scholastic athletes, or a lot of times the maturity level of any athlete.
Right.
Emotions, you get caught up in it. It's a bad play and a play you can't make, and a play that could potentially have a wide-reaching impact on this game later. It turns out that it doesn't, but it could have, because as you said, that late in the game, I'm not a big fan of going for too early.
I think they would have went for it, though.
And I'm not a big fan of chasing points, because when you miss them, since you only have success on 2 about 40% of the time, it's really not a good play until you have to do it. At that point in the game, it was fourth quarter. They would have gone for it, and I wouldn't have blamed them for going for 2 in that situation. You tie the score instead of being down a point, and now you're after it. Because at very worst, you're down 2.
Right.
You're not really chasing a point. It's still a field goal game and everything else. So at that point, in that situation, I would have agreed with Jimbo Fisher if he went for 2. The penalty took the decision out of his hands.
Right. So from there, it is 21-20. Auburn goes down the field, kicks a field goal to make it 24-20. Actually, Marshall made a bad throw there, if you remember, inside the 10. He rolled out right, had a guy open in the end zone, but threw it right over his head.
Yes.
They got to settle for the field goal there. Okay, you kick the field goal. You're up 24-20, 4 minutes left. Then the game gets really wild. Because off of that, Florida State gets the 100-yard kickoff return to go up 27-24. And at this stage of the game, I'm like, there's no way Auburn's going down the field and scoring a touchdown.
And what does Auburn do? They go down the field, score a touchdown.
Right down the field and score a touchdown. Look good doing it. I was shocked because they had not done much in the second half. Had one decent drive.
You didn't figure that they could really get that kind of sustained drive. Time wasn't really a factor.
No.
And you know why you'd say, well, a team that runs the ball as much as they do, time's always going to be a factor. Not at the pace that they run the football.
No.
I mean, they snap the ball so quickly that even with a run-oriented offense that can take 7 to 10 plays to get it down the field, they'll still get it down the field in 2 to 3 minutes.
No, absolutely. So I'm not thinking Auburn can score at all.
I wasn't either.
They go right down the field and score.
I kind of thought when I saw the kickoff return, I said,
yeah, that's it.
Florida State finally got over the hump.
Right, they're going to shut them down.
Their defense had turned the corner in the second half. This looks like how this game is probably going to end.
Right. So Auburn goes down the field, scores to make it 31-27 with 1:19 left. And my first thought with 1:19 left is Florida State's going to go down the field and score. They left too much time on the clock. That was my first thought.
What did you say before we signed on? You have to be the team that has the ball last. That's how you win football games.
I'm telling you, Joe, we've watched a lot of college and pro football.
Whoever's got the ball last seems to win.
If you leave any amount of decent time on the clock, I'm not talking about like a few seconds. If you leave a minute, 50 seconds, minute and a half, these teams get down the field so fast now. I mean, you basically have to leave no time on the clock now to win these games.
And you know something? Take a look at this drive. If Auburn hadn't scored, because, you know, Trey Mason scores from, was it 31 yards out or 33 yards?
Right,
something like that.
It was a long play.
If he had gotten closer, there would have been talk on the Auburn sideline. All right, they're going to let you score.
Right.
Get to the one.
Right.
Stop.
Right, exactly.
And burn clock.
Choose some time.
And then we'll go in and score.
Right. All right.
Well, that didn't happen. That discussion never happened because they were 30-odd yards out.
Right.
Trey Mason takes it in, and they leave that minute plus on the clock, and now game on, Florida State football.
So Auburn is up 4 points, a minute 19 left. Florida State does not have a good kick return. They get maybe to the 20. I don't even think they're at the 20, maybe the 19, 20-yard line.
Right inside the 20-yard line. You're right.
Then from there, 2nd and 2 from the Florida State 28. I thought this was the biggest play of the game. Winston to Green on a short little pass. 3 Auburn Tigers had a chance to tackle him. They missed the tackle. He goes streaking right down the sidelines for 50 yards. I mean, Florida State flipped the field in 2 plays there. Auburn did not give themselves a chance to put any pressure on Florida State there.
Well, Green terrorized them all game. And he was the one receiver for Florida State that for 3.5 quarters of this football game had any impact. And Auburn had no answers on how to cover him. Travis Benjamin, on the other hand, was a non-factor for most of this game, right up until the very end.
Right.
You know, and that surprised me a lot. You know, to me, he's a big, physical, fast target, and elite receiver. Green was the guy for Florida State offensively that kept them in this game and allowed Jameis Winston to get his legs under him by getting open continually throughout this game.
You look at it, Joe, Florida State starts at their own 20, and then they have a 2nd and 2 at their own 28. They go from their own 28 to the Auburn 23 in just a couple plays, in just like 20 or 30 seconds.
Nice thing about college football, every time you make a first down, the clock stops. You get a chance to get yourself lined up, snap the ball without losing any time. It doesn't take long in college football, especially when you're taking off big chunks to get yourself in position to go score and win the game.
And the thing about that play to Green, that was a very short pass.
And bad tackling, which is something you didn't see throughout the game from this Auburn defense. When they needed to make a big play the most, they came up small in that spot.
3 Tigers were around him. He split 2 of them right away, then made the other guy miss and went right down the sideline. Should have been a horse collar at the end of that play.
They didn't call it.
Did not call that. But Auburn did not allow, they didn't help themselves there at all. They didn't put any pressure on Florida State there.
Which is interesting because throughout the game, particularly in the first half, but even in the second half, despite Winston getting his legs under him and having much more success in the second half, he was dealing with pressure from that Auburn front four and front seven all night long. Auburn and Ellis Johnson did a great job of not only getting pressure at times from just the front four, at other times bringing the dogs with the linebackers, but also the safeties and corners. He was very creative in his blitz schemes, and you never necessarily knew where the pressure was coming from. And Jameis Winston and that Florida State offensive line had a lot of trouble figuring out a lot of their protections, and Jameis Winston was under pressure all night long, except for the final drive where he sat back there in a rocking chair and picked them apart.
Even so, without the pressure, you make the tackle there, you put pressure on Florida State. They still got to go the length of the field. It's under a minute. You know yes, they have 2 timeouts. I understand that.
Small DBs taking bad angles equals missed tackles. And that's one of the problems with Auburn, is they got small DBs, particularly on the corners.
Right.
You know, Florida State's got these big, physical, athletic, speedy wide receivers.
Right.
The Auburn corners are speedy. They're certainly physical, but they're a heck of a lot smaller. And at the end of the game, we saw that the size and athleticism of the Florida State receivers took over versus the smallish quality of the Auburn corners.
If you're Auburn there, you want to just let Florida State catch the little pass, make the tackle, make them work for it. They didn't make Florida State...
Keep it in front of you.
They didn't make Florida State work. In 2 plays, they went right down the field. They flipped the field position and put all the pressure back on Auburn.
He's definitely feeling better. He's screaming.
Exactly.
I love it.
But Auburn just did not put any pressure on Florida State.
I don't know if the table's going to be able to handle your emotion.
You know what I'm saying, though?
I know exactly
what. 2 plays.
What is the one thing you do? When you have a lead, you're always willing to trade points for time.
Right.
Or distance for time, depending on how many scores we're talking about. So when you miss a tackle like that and don't keep everything in front of you, and in 2 plays you let a team flip the field, you're now really on your heels.
Right.
Because Florida State could smell the end zone with close to a minute left.
Absolutely.
They had plenty of time
and
to run. They had timeouts, and an opportunity to run. The whole playbook was open to them to get whatever play they wanted to get in the end zone.
Auburn had to make the tackle there. They didn't. That was one of the biggest plays of the game. Then from there, another huge play. Florida State has a 3rd and 8 from the Auburn 10. Pass interference. Now listen.
That was the right call. They mugged him.
It was definitely pass interference. He was all over him. I don't think he was going to catch the ball. Now, I'm not saying it was uncatchable.
If it's not uncatchable, you got to call it.
Right. I'm not saying it was not uncatchable, but looking at it, I don't think the guy would have caught the ball. And the Auburn defensive back did not need to do that. He was close enough.
He had good coverage. He was in good position. Why he used that left hand and pulled him. And once you do that, they're going to call that when you reach around with that arm and you pull and you tug, they will call it. If you change the path of that receiver, they will call it every time.
Absolutely a good call. Had to call it. He definitely mugged him. He did not need to do it. And if you asked me, if they would have ran that play,
you don't think he would have caught the ball?
I do. Now, I'm not saying it was not uncatchable, but I don't think he would have caught it. The way it developed, the way it sailed over, I don't think he was going to get to it.
Now it's 1st and goal from the 2.
And we go. Let me go back to that play, though, because if they don't get that pass interference call,
it's 4th down.
4th and 8, and there would have been some real theater and drama there. I would have loved to have seen that. That's what I would have loved to have seen in this game. 4th and 8, you can get a touchdown, you can get a 1st down, Auburn can win the game. So many variables.
Oh, yeah, that would have made it real exciting. But now it's 1st and goal from the 2.
Right, and you just, to me, I knew Florida State was getting in there.
Well, and Florida State gets the matchup they want. They get Benjamin on a smaller corner.
Right.
Our friend from the Iron Bowl.
Right.
Who made the big return for the touchdown.
Right.
He's physical. He's fast. He's athletic. He's also 6 inches shorter than Travis Benjamin.
Right.
Benjamin takes advantage of his size, boxes him out. Davis can't get around him.
No.
Touchdown Florida State. Seminoles win.
Seminoles win, and I'll tell you, if you are an Auburn fan...
34-31. And by the way, unfortunately you got sick. Otherwise, our BCS Bowl preview we would have had this game nailed. Because you know what? I didn't predict. I predicted 37-34 Florida State
really?
on a game-ending field goal by the Luke Roser Award.
34-31. I had.
You had this?
Yes, 34-31.
Auburn.
Florida State, but I didn't have it this way exactly at the end there. I had.
Who did?
No,
you had the field goal being kicked like I did?
No, I had like Auburn getting like a late touchdown to make it 3.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Not like, not that it came down to this.
We would have made everybody a lot of money, but unfortunately, these things happen. I mean, we both had a good feel for this game as far as the outcome and knew it was going to be a lot closer than the number indicated.
Yeah.
And we thought we had a great bet with that number.
Yeah, I liked Florida State to be up by about 10 in this game and Auburn to get one of those backdoor covers and make it 3.
I thought it was going to be I actually had it where it was going to be 37-34. It was the Florida State kicker, and this is what I thought was so funny. Florida State winning a game with a field goal, but they do have the Luke Roser Award kicker.
He's a great kicker.
And he's only a freshman.
He's a great kicker.
He's going to be there for a long time.
Right.
So I thought they were going to win it on his toe or on his foot late in the game.
So, great comeback by Florida State. They scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. If you're an Auburn fan, you had a great season, a lot of drama. You got to be sick, though. You got to feel like you could have won this game. Left points on the board in the first half. Numerous chances in that second half. They let up the big kickoff return. Then they let Florida State get down the field again at the end of the game. Then you get a pass interference call you didn't need to have. Had your chances for sure to win this game.
Left points on the field and lost the battle with special teams. That right there is what undermined you. Because offense versus offense, defense versus defense, you won this game for the better part of 60 minutes or for all 60 minutes.
Yeah, you look at the stats. They had the better of the stats.
The breakdowns, 2 major special teams breakdowns. 2.
Yes.
That basically resulted in 14 points.
And Auburn dropped 3 kicks that they were fortunate to recover.
Absolutely.
By the way.
Could have been even worse.
And there was another play in this game, oh, by the way, I think it was the third quarter, where Auburn got a holding call, which negated a big first down.
It was the holding call on their star left tackle.
Right.
Who's going to be playing on Sunday?
They would have been in field goal range right then and there. So that was another huge call.
They left points on the field. They lost the battle of special teams. But when you look at the numbers and you watch the game, offense versus defense, defense versus offense, Auburn was the better team throughout this football game.
Oh, absolutely.
But the bottom line says, on the scoreboard, Florida State's the better team because they won.
No, absolutely. But it was one heck of a football game. The second best BCS national title
And the
game.
Auburn Tigers have nothing to hang their head
No.
It was a great year. To emerge as the top dog, as it were, or lion in their, or tiger in their case.
How about the running back? Tremendous.
And to emerge as the top dog in the SEC, that's never anything to hang your head about. They had a great year. They provided a great challenge for a terrific Florida State team. But now we don't have to talk about this BCS stuff anymore.
Right.
We're going to have a 14 playoffs. So there are going to be teams that will have a say at the national title going forward, like 5, 6, and 7, who would be legitimate contenders, who are going to be left out, will be able to make a case.
Right.
But fortunately, they're sliding the teams left out further down.
Right, absolutely.
4 is certainly better than 2. I think 8 would be the right amount, but 4 is better than 2, and I'm looking forward to the playoffs.
Definitely a step in the right direction. I am so looking forward to
some of the new bowls that are going to be.
No, absolutely.
And some of the new alliances that are forming as far as bowl games on New Year's Day and beyond leading up to the playoffs, along with the existing bowls being used as part of the playoffs. It's going to be a lot of fun.
No, but an absolutely thrilling national title game. I really enjoyed it.
A great way to say goodbye to the BCS era, would you agree?
I would agree to that. I would definitely agree to that. So Florida State wins the national title. Very well deserved. I thought once they beat Clemson, once I saw them beat up on Clemson in Death Valley, which no one does, I thought they were the best team in the league right then and there, even better than Alabama at that point. I remember telling you that. I thought Florida State was even better at Alabama at that point. Once I saw Florida State go into Clemson and just demolish them, Clemson never takes a beating at home like that. I thought Florida State was the best team right then and there.
Okay. Hard to disagree with you. They're the ones standing at the end. I actually thought Alabama was the best team in the country. They didn't win every game. They lost late, so they're not there. That's just the way the system goes. But if you were to ask me now, amongst Auburn, Alabama and Florida State, which is the best team in America, I'd still take Alabama. And that's even after their loss to Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl.
Not very impressive.
I knew they weren't going to.
The defense was not good.
There's certain things that, we've talked about this a lot off the air. When it's BCS championship or bust for you,
right,
and you don't go to that BCS title game,
were flat.
When you show up for that bowl game, you're not ready to play and you lose. I'll remember Alabama when they played in the Sugar Bowl against Utah. They got their doors blown up, and that was a situation where they lost late in the year too. Look at Ohio State. Once they weren't playing in either the BCS title game or the Rose Bowl, don't get me wrong, the Orange Bowl is still a BCS bowl.
Right.
They didn't show up for that game.
See, I thought it was the Alabama quarterback's last game, I thought maybe that.
Well, he showed up, and he didn't play great either. But he showed up, but an awful lot of guys didn't.
No.
Their offensive line wasn't its normal dominant self. They left the ball on the ground. T.J. Yeldon didn't look like he wanted to be there. Bunch of guys on that defense certainly lacked intensity.
No, absolutely. So let's get to some of the other bowl games. We're not going to go through all of them because there was 400 bowl games this year.
Let's put it this way: if you're a Division 1A or a football bowl subdivision team, and you didn't make a bowl, you had a very good program because there were. Basically, I think there were spots for almost 70 teams out of 110.
Right, and a lot of the early bowls were bad matchups, blowouts in front of light crowds. Now, it picked up a little bit as you get the better teams, but those early bowl matchups were tough to watch.
The ones right around Christmas, I know, right before and the early part directly after Christmas, they're not even intriguing matchups. They're not very watchable.
No, they're not. So I had a tough time, even for me, and I love college football, getting into those early bowl matchups.
Well, you know what it is? Those are games that if they were regular season matchups, you wouldn't watch them during the regular season because there'd be a better matchup on TV.
Right.
So all of a sudden you put it at bowl season where there's nothing at stake and it's a pair of 6-6 teams going at it. You're like,
yeah, right.
Okay.
No, exactly. All right, now one game I want to touch on that I normally wouldn't, but you were at this game, the Pinstripe Bowl, Notre Dame and Rutgers. Notre Dame wins, doesn't look impressive. Tell us about your experience at Yankee Stadium on a very nice day in New York for football.
It was great. It was 50 degrees
out. You get that for the Super Bowl.
It was 50 degrees out. The turf at Yankee Stadium wasn't very good and wasn't in great shape for football. Notre Dame, as usual, draws well here in New York.
Right.
There are a lot of what we call subway alums.
I saw there was a nice crowd.
So there was a lot of blue and gold, but there was a surprising amount of scarlet,
they made
Rutgers
the journey.
Scarlet.
They came over from
crowd.
Jersey.
They came over from Jersey, and what I thought was going to be an 80-20 crowd with a few empty seats looked pretty close to full and was about 70-30, 60-40 Notre Dame over Rutgers. Notre Dame took care of their business. They weren't impressive. They were certainly the better football team.
Kept Rutgers in the game.
And did everything they could with mistakes and lack of execution to keep an undermanned Rutgers team in the game. They pulled away late, take care of their business. Most of the crowd goes home happy because Notre Dame wins.
How were your seats, by the way? Where were you sitting?
We're actually sitting 50-yard line. Nice.
Of course. Nothing but the best for Mr. Joe Spano. 50-yard line.
I called in a couple of favors. What can I say?
I'm actually surprised you weren't on the Notre Dame sidelines, by the way.
I wasn't. Couldn't pull that favor.
And you took the train, or did you drive?
We drove it.
You drove it. Did you get an actual parking spot over there by Yankee Stadium?
Yeah, one of 13 that were left.
A nightmare parking over there.
We got there early. We went to some of the bars.
You don't like the whole take the train subway to Yankee Stadium. You'd rather drive.
Well, if you live on Long Island, for those of you that don't know the area, this is going to be a conversation. It's not going to interest you, but you'll deal with it. You have to go all the way into Manhattan,
right,
and then you got to go all the way to the Bronx. It's kind of the long way,
right?
So if I was already in Manhattan,
right,
or even in Queens, I might do it. But being on Long Island, I said, I'll drive in. We'll get there early. There's some cool bars over there, like if you go early to a Yankee game. It's the same thing. So we hung out in the bars.
So you enjoyed yourself.
I had a very good
time. Definitely thumbs up for the whole Pinstripe Bowl experience.
Absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not a marquee bowl, but if your team is playing it and you want to go see them, it's an obtainable ticket. And it's a good experience.
There you go. So thumbs up for you for the Yankee Stadium experience. I want to touch on the Alamo Bowl real quick as Oregon just buried Texas. I thought Texas was going to show some signs of life.
And I didn't think Oregon was going to show it all. This is the type of spot where Oregon's not supposed to show.
No.
You know, we only cared about the BCS title game. We don't care about the Rose Bowl, which is good you weren't in it. And we're certainly, I didn't think they were going to care about the Alamo Bowl.
And all
Mac Brown's last game.
And all Texas fans there. And leading up to the game, all you heard from every Texas player is, we got to win this game for Mac Brown. We got to win this game for Mac Brown.
They're just not that talented.
They are not talented at
And they've lost every quarterback in the state of Texas. The only quarterbacks they've been able to get are McCoy's and Garrett Gilbert. And he stunk so bad, he transferred to SMU.
Right.
SMU thought he was going to resurrect their program. He's put 2 programs in the toilet.
Absolutely. So Oregon surprisingly just bombed Texas.
Sorry to pick on Garrett Gilbert, but
no,
the truth is the truth.
Mac Brown, listen. He won a national title. He got to
2 BCS games.
He did some really good things at Texas.
He ain't done any of them for the last 5 years.
I think, personally, it was time for him to go. I think it was the right choice to see him out the door.
You like Charlie Strong?
I do like Strong. I like him a lot. Now, listen, there were other guys, if you could get them, yeah, but you couldn't get those guys.
He wasn't their first choice. Nobody else. At that point, they had worked their process. This was the next guy on the list. What I will tell you is he's a very good recruiter.
I like him.
He's a dynamite football coach. This really could work. You know, obviously, it's one of those, is he a big enough guy for the room? You could question that. But he's a good recruiter.
I like him.
So now go back to winning the state of Texas. Because if you want to know something about college football, you want to know how to be successful?
Yeah, win Texas.
Win your state.
Yeah, and Texas
is
a good state to win.
That's a good state to win. The way college football recruiting works, starts here and works out. We were talking to Herschel Walker about this the other day on the show. We had him on for something that he was doing. We ended up talking a little Georgia football.
Yeah.
Big problem with the University of Georgia. Mark Richt's under a lot of pressure, and Georgia's obviously had their share of issues. They've also had their share of success. They don't dominate in recruiting in the state of Georgia.
No.
Start by winning your state, and then work out. That's what Nick Saban does in Alabama. That's what Les Miles does in Louisiana. Win your state and work your way out. That's the formula for success, and that's what Charlie Strong needs to do in Texas. Jameis Winston is a Texas kid. Said Mac Brown never even approached him to recruit him.
Hard to believe.
He said, if he had called me, I'd have gone to Texas. So Charlie Strong has to start getting. There's a million 4- and 5-star quarterbacks in Texas. Get one of them.
I like Strong. I like him a lot. I think it's a good, solid choice. I was also happy to see all the other big-name coaches stay at their school.
I wasn't, because it made me wrong. I thought Kevin Sumlin was sure to go to Texas, even right after he signed the extension. I said, if Texas calls him, he'll go.
Right. Saban stayed.
Sumlin stayed.
UCLA
Art Briles stayed. Jim Mora Jr. stayed.
And even the Miami coach stayed. He was rumored not for the Texas job.
Penn State job.
Right. He stayed as well. I was very happy to see that. These guys have big-time jobs as it is. Stay where you are. If you want to go to the NFL, that's one thing.
So you're okay with Bill O'Brien leaving to go to the NFL?
Yes, I can understand that.
And you knew he wasn't there long-term. You could see, once he changed the buyout, once there was this overwhelming desire by him and his agent to change that buyout to get out and go to the NFL, you knew what was coming, didn't you?
Absolutely. I understand if you want to go to the NFL, and I also understand if you have ties to a school like the USC coach has. I understand that. But for like a Saban to go from Alabama to Texas, I don't like that at all. For a Texas A&M coach to go to Texas, I don't like that at all. I don't like that. So I was happy that all
you're not okay with career advancement.
To me, it's not advancement. It's just sliding to the side. It's kind of...
Well, in the case of Saban, it is, because Alabama to Texas really is a lateral.
Even Fisher was rumored for the job at one point. These jobs are all big enough.
Well,
these jobs are all big enough.
There aren't many bigger jobs in college football than the University of Texas.
I understand that, but when you're the head coach of Florida State, come on, they just won the national title.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying,
but you can't tell me that Texas A&M to Texas is a lateral. No way. Forget results on the
field. If you're telling me TCU...
Look at the size of the program. Look at a story of success, and look within the state. It's always been Texas number one.
Look,
everybody else 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
More successful right now. Texas A&M is more successful.
You want to know why they're more successful right now? Because I'm there. I being Kevin Sumlin. So he, in his mind, if he goes to Texas, all the success will follow him.
To me, I know they haven't had good seasons the last couple.
Gary Patterson.
I love the TCU coach. I love him. I think he's a diamond in the rough.
Very highly of you. We've talked.
No, I like him a lot. I wish he would have been considered.
Well, he's got to recruit a quarterback himself.
Right.
That's what's killed him the last couple of years.
Hey, TCU,
and he's going to have to start to win some games in the Big 12.
It's not an easy place to.
And he's going to have to start to be a front runner in that conference to get considered for these big jobs again.
So me personally, I know you disagree with me, I was happy.
Well, I'm a social climber, you know me.
I was happy Saban stayed, and the Miami coach stayed, and Briles stayed, and Sumlin stayed, and all these guys stayed at their job.
You don't think Briles is going to the Redskins?
That's something different.
I hope not. That has disaster written all over it to me.
That's the NFL. That's something different. You see,
right. You said you're okay with Bill O'Brien going to Houston.
Absolutely. He wants to try his hand at the NFL. I understand that. Bale is building a nice program. They have a new stadium. Stay there. A Texas A&M coach, I mean, they had a really, really good team this year.
See, you'd be the guy who would never want to read See, you wouldn't even entertain offers.
It's not about money. These guys are making plenty of money.
It's always about money.
But you know what I'm saying.
It's always about money because here's what happens.
How much more
a job opens up, right? So, yeah, let me throw my hat in the ring. Yeah. Say I'm a rumored candidate. I'm not going to go there. But now you're the AD. You got to come back to. We're going to tear up your old deal. We're going to give you a new deal for more money and lower buyouts. Oh, okay.
I understand that, but I mean, it's not that big of a money deal like to go from Texas A&M to Texas. He's making millions already.
Right. I mean, if I had your money, I wouldn't worry about it.
Right.
But for the rest of us, mere mortals out there.
And it's not like you can't win at Texas A&M. They're doing more winning than Texas right now. I mean, so to me, I like when they stay at the schools they're at. Now, listen,
I like it too because, hey, the coach has a contract that's not worth the paper it's written on, but the kid he recruited has to stay there.
Right.
I get it. I understand the problem. But for me, if, there's a certain hierarchy of schools within a state. So as an example, if you're the head coach of Michigan State and Michigan comes calling, well, hey, Michigan State's night.
Once again, Michigan State and finished third in the polls.
What's the higher profile program? What's the one with the storied tradition?
See,
what's the one you want to be at?
You're talking past here. I'm talking right now. We're in a right now business. You want to go back down, you want to tell me when Army had a great historical program.
Yes, I'm going to take the Army.
You know what I'm saying, though?
I do. But also what happens with these coaches is they want to go to the premier job in the state, let's just say.
Right.
And I understand Michigan State's doing the winning now, and today's brand of football with 85 scholarships is the limit in college football.
Right.
And the fact
talent is spread around.
And the fact that everybody's on TV every week.
Right.
So no matter where you go, you can always be found on TV easily. There are those jobs that are just bigger than other jobs, even if the other job is the one currently doing more of the winning.
Right.
That's more of an element of today's brand of football with scholarship limits at 85. Everybody's on TV. These kids now look for opportunities to jump into where they can start quickly, as opposed to going to the powerhouse and waiting their turn. I get it, but when you're a coach and it comes down to dollars and cents, and also the chance to sustain success, it's all about going to the bigger place. Because it's a lot easier to sustain success long term at Michigan than it is at Michigan State. It's a lot easier to sustain long term success at University of Texas than it is at Texas A&M.
See, I understand if you're telling me Louisville of Texas. I see that. There's a difference there. See, to me, Texas and Texas A&M, I don't see the great difference that you see right now in this day and age.
Is there a Texas A&M network?
There is not.
I mean, and that's the great difference.
But I'm talking about winning football games.
But that's the great difference because Texas A&M is nice. Texas recruits itself. It does.
I understand.
And when you're a head coach, man, that makes your job easy. That's why the only job in America Saban would consider leaving Alabama for because now Alabama recruits itself, is Texas.
I understand
where
all
you
that.
call up, we want you to come here. Okay, when do I show up and where do I sign?
Right, and I'm also happy Stoops stayed. I didn't want to see him, even though it was the NFL. I didn't want to see him.
He was going to fail miserably in the NFL. He was failing miserably at Oklahoma.
Right, they did rally at the end of the year a little bit. We'll get to that in a second. But I am happy
We're right on schedule.
These big-time coaches stayed where they were. I know you disagree with me, but hey, we got to disagree on something.
We got to disagree on something. We can't always. And you know, our loyal following, which is always growing, by the way.
Right.
I love it. They're free to voice their opinion and tell Mike how wrong he is and how right I am.
Right, absolutely.
So write into Mike and let him know how wrong he is and how right I am.
There we go. All right, so Strong goes to Texas. Here's a bowl game that I would not normally discuss, but I have to discuss this game because there's another team you were high on. The Holiday Bowl, Texas Tech beat Arizona State 37-23. Now, I said from day one...
Does that score tell the story of that game? Or was that game over much earlier than the end?
It was, and I'll tell you, Arizona State, and I know you love the coach, and I know he's a good coach, even though we bailed out on Pitt after 1 year. I know he's a good coach. Arizona State continues to be soft. They can't win a neutral site game. They can't win a bowl game. They can't win on the road. Texas Tech was a dead caucus at the end of the year, got blown out 5 weeks in a row, and they laid it on Arizona State.
Quarterback looked like Peyton Manning out there. Did you see that game?
Yes, I couldn't believe how bad Arizona State played in this game. They looked like a dead caucus, and I picked on Arizona State the whole year. They had a nice year this year.
And then you picked them once, and they promptly lost.
Yes, I had the gall.
You jumped on the bandwagon and like... Screw Mike, we're gonna lay an egg now.
Right, and they certainly did. And they are such a soft team year after year after year. They continue to come up soft.
I mean, they came up small in that Holiday Bowl. I understand they were on the cusp of playing for the Rose Bowl.
They're a bully team.
But they're also Arizona State. You get an invitation to the Holiday Bowl, be ready to play. You're not USC, where all of a sudden you're playing in a nothing bowl and you don't show up. You're Arizona State.
Unbelievable how bad they played. They are such a...
And that game was a huge blowout. Arizona scored some of those points late to make that look respectable. Texas Tech dominated this game for the first 3 quarters.
Arizona State continues to be a bully team at home, nothing more.
Okay.
That's all I have to say about them. All right, as far as the Chick-fil-A game, Texas A&M...
The old Peach Bowl. I love this game.
It's always
New
exciting.
Year's Eve. It's always an exciting and a good matchup. We were watching this while we were playing cards on New Year's Eve, baby.
Texas A&M rallies to win 52-48 over Duke. Another game with absolutely no defense in it. Duke has a
Any
huge
game with
lead.
Texas A&M in it
Right.
has no defense.
Duke blows a huge lead. Manziel does his magic in, jumping into the line, jumping back, throwing passes.
By the way, and I don't know if, I know you hadn't been feeling well. I don't know if you watched this game.
I did watch, and I was upset. I was rooting for Duke.
We were watching this game while we were playing cards. I did good, didn't I, baby girl? We made some money playing poker.
There you go.
But we were watching this game, and Texas A&M didn't show up for the entire first half.
Oh, they were terrible in the first half.
This was one of those where Texas A&M, we're much bigger than a New Year's Eve bowl game that nobody's watching, the Chick-fil-A Bowl. And they came out flat as a pancake.
Oh, they were awful.
Duke, you actually heard, if you watched the game, they showed, the pregame huddle.
Yeah.
This was their Super Bowl, and they came out ready to play. They had I think they had a fake punt in the game, if I recall correctly.
They did a lot of good things well in the first half.
They were dominating on special teams, offense, defense. They got out to the big lead. All of a sudden, in the second half, the physical ability of a far more talented Texas A&M team took hold. Johnny Manziel put this team on his back and willed Texas A&M to victory.
And they got a couple big turnovers. They had the big interception.
So if there's a such thing as a bad win for A&M, this was it. Because they didn't want to be there. They didn't show up for this game. And the fact that they were just better hat on hat than Duke ended up willing out in the end because their quarterback's that special.
And here's another thing, and I'm saying this about basically every team in America now. Texas A&M's got to get some defense as well. And I'm saying this about every team now. No one plays defense anymore. I mean,
some of it's an element of how many plays are running at college. Don't let the scores deceive you.
Their defense is not good, though.
A&M's defense is one of the worst in America. And that's why when you see 52-48, you said no defense was played in this game. No game with Texas A&M in it has any defense played.
Do you think Manziel definitely goes pro?
Yeah.
Definitely, no question. He seems like a partier. Like, he likes school, he likes all that kind of stuff. He hasn't announced it yet. He won't be the first quarterback pick. Won't even be the top two.
Third.
Be the third. You
He's
think
going to go behind Bortles and he'll go behind Bridgewater.
You think he definitely goes?
Yeah.
Okay, you heard it here first.
Because there's a bunch of teams that need quarterbacks, and if he goes, he won't go outside the top 10.
Okay.
And as a result, you know, if he goes back to school next year, his stock's not going to go up.
Right.
He's now played 2 full seasons. He's now played enough football. And again, it is going to hurt him because he hasn't played a ton of football.
No.
Bortles and Bridgewater have both played more football. And if you notice, when these guys go to the next level being the NFL, the fact that you played a lot of football in college usually serves you very well at the quarterback position.
Bill Parcells used to always say that he had a little scheme for how he drafted quarterbacks, and one of them was they had to start like at least 3 years of college. He had this whole system.
It's different now, but Bortles has started 2 full seasons, plus he played in almost every game as a freshman and started a couple of games as a freshman. Bridgewater's played a lot of football. Manziel's started 2 full seasons. He's played enough football. I feel better about drafting him, considering some of the other things that you may question about him based on him not being prototypical NFL. I'd feel a lot better about him if he had another year under his belt, but it's not going to improve his draft stock enough to go back to school because I don't think a diploma's in his future.
Right, okay, so that was the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Let's get to the Rose Bowl. There was actually some defense played in this Rose Bowl, believe it or not. Someone actually played some defense.
Well, these were 2 physical teams.
Right.
And by the way, a great job by the replacement Michigan State linebackers. Michigan State loses their stud middle linebacker. He was suspended for a violation of team rules of some kind. They never said what it was.
They never got into it, yeah.
You know, but the 2 backups that backed up and rotated in at the middle linebacker position did a very good job, not only physically, but also scheme-wise in making the right reads and the right calls, getting that defense lined up right, and then when it came time to execute, did a very good job physically in a very defensive-oriented physical struggle.
Michigan State wins this game 24-20. How about the season Michigan State had? Only 1 loss to your Irish.
Yeah, which turns out to be a really bad
They
loss.
would have beat them at the end of the year. No, hey, Notre Dame, when you go to Notre Dame, you could always lose. The ghost, the history, you can always lose to Notre Dame. But if they would have played them at the end of the year, they would have beat them. Their offense at the end of the year got much better, Michigan State, and their defense was really
well,
good.
the quarterback's on the come. I like the young quarterback. At the beginning of the year, he was really struggling to find his way, as was that entire offense. Now the offense is near the equal of the defense. It's not the equal of the defense, because that's one of the best couple of defenses in America. But the offense can hold its own. And honestly, as the year moved along, they got better and better. And they end the year certainly as one of the 4 best teams in America.
Without a doubt. A couple of things I didn't like from a Stanford strategic. 17-17, third quarter, 8 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Stanford has a 4th and 3 from the Michigan State 36. To me, I would have punted there or I would have passed the ball to get the first down. They decide to go for it. They run right up the middle to try and get 3 yards.
They got stopped by about 6 feet, which is 2 yards.
This is not Arizona State's defense. This is Michigan State, who's one of the best defensive teams in the country. I know you're Stanford. I know you're a power running team.
And by the way, that was after they had run it into the line on 3rd down and got nowhere either, if you remember correctly. You
either punt the ball there or you pass.
I wouldn't punt the ball.
Or you pass for the first down.
There's not much to be gained there. It's that no man's land. I would go for it in that situation.
But you got to throw the ball there, or if you want to try a long field goal, which they didn't want to do.
What about a play-action fake? Roll Hogan. He's got enough legs. Roll him on the edge. Give a run-pass option. If it's open, take it with your legs. Get the first down.
You can't expect to plow through the Michigan State line and get 3 yards there. That'll work against Arizona State.
Especially after you tried it on 3rd down, if I recall, and got nowhere.
You
got stoned,
right?
Didn't he?
This is not Arizona State's defense. This is one of the few defenses.
Pick on Arizona State. What did they do to you?
This is one of the few defenses that can handle that. So at that point, that changed the whole field position the rest of the game. Stanford never recovered from the field position they lost there. From there, Michigan State goes up 24-17. Then here's another play I didn't like for Stanford. About 5 minutes to go in the game, they're down 7. They have a 4th and 5. They decide to kick the field goal there to make it 24-20. I did not like the field goal there at all, and I'll tell you why. You still have to get the ball back and drive the length of the field on one of the best defenses in the country.
What you're basically saying is 24-17 is a one touchdown game. 24-20 is still a one touchdown game.
Right.
You've solved nothing.
And
except for the fact that if you get the touchdown, you win, as opposed to going to overtime. But in essence, you've solved nothing.
Right, and you're asking your offense to go the length of the field yet another time against one of the best defenses in college football. You're already down there. You're down 7. You're going to need a touchdown at some point anyway. It's 4th and 5. It's not 4th and 15.
Okay.
Go for it there. And I'm not saying I thought they weren't going to get the ball back, which was another factor. There's 5 minutes left. Michigan State gets a couple first downs. They can ice the game. I thought Stanford would get the ball back. But I didn't like their chances of going the length of the field and scoring a touchdown there. Sure enough, they do get the ball back. Again, 4th and 1. They're stopped. Game over. Good night, Michigan State's
They
win.
got stoned a lot in the running game, let me tell you, on 3rd and 4th and short.
I thought Stanford a couple times, should have went for it. They kicked the field goal there. I did not think they should have.
You didn't like a lot of the choices of when they went for it, when they kicked field goals, and the play calls. And it's hard to argue with you. As you said, you're not Stanford running into one of these finesse teams that's hanging around the Pac-12 or some other places. You're actually in a rare situation where you're playing a team that's as physical as you are. And throughout the game, on 3rd and 4th and short, you kept getting stoned.
Right.
You couldn't get push. So why would you keep going back to it?
Right.
Why not use some deception? You have a quarterback who's got pretty good legs. Get him on the perimeter and allow him to have those run-pass options. If they cover the pass, tuck it and run, slide, get the first down. If they come after you, throw the ball to a wide-open guy on the wing who runs that simple waggle pattern.
Right.
As a tight end, you block, you sneak out, and you're out there uncovered. I understand it. If you keep pounding it in the line and it's not working, at some point, take advantage of what you've done, play action, fake it, and get guys on the perimeter where there aren't very many guys defending because everybody's sucked into the line.
See, to me, when you're down 24-17 with about 5 minutes to go, you're asking for too many things to happen in your favor there.
To get the ball back with timeouts and everything
Well, here's what you got to do. First of all, you got to kick the field goal and make it. Then you got to stop Michigan State. Then you got to get the ball back and drive the length of the field on one of the best defenses in college football.
With very little time left, probably.
I don't like that. If you're down there, down 7 with 5 minutes to go, and you have a 4th and 5, you go for it right then and there because you may not get back down the field, and they didn't.
I won't argue with you because, honestly, the field goal changes nothing. I still need a touchdown.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm going home a loser. I might push it and try and get the touchdown right.
So I didn't like that, and I didn't like, as I said, in the third quarter, 17-17, 8 minutes left, 4th and 3, you try and plow up the middle for 3 yards. I mean, that's just not going to get it done.
You're not going to get very many arguments from me. I certainly thought Mark D'Antonio out-coached.
I did. And we like the Stanford coach.
We do.
We like him a lot, but Michigan State,
Shaw's a very good coach.
Very nice season for Michigan State.
Absolutely.
Surprisingly
One
nice
loss, 3 in the country.
When they lost to Notre Dame, if you told me they finished number 3 in the country, I would have said you're out of your mind.
If you watched them early in the year, their offense couldn't get out of its own way.
They couldn't score, even in like the first few games when they're playing like the Little Sisters before. Like you said,
they had some real struggles offensively. The quarterback has evolved into a very nice player. They've got some decent weapons on offense. Defensively, there's pros all over that defense. The middle linebacker will be playing on someday. Right. They've got 2 of the best corners in all of college football.
Right.
Both of those guys are going to be playing on Sunday. They're loaded defensively, and they got a good coach.
And another thing, did you see all the green in the crowd out there in the Rose Bowl?
They traveled well.
Dominated the crowd.
Well, wouldn't you want to get out of East Lansing in January?
I thought it would be 50-50.
I want to get out of here.
I thought it would be 50-50. It was like 70-30 in favor of Michigan State, and Stanford's out in California. So I was very surprised Michigan State had so many fans in attendance. It was all green.
Impressive.
Very impressive. So really nice job by Michigan State. So that was the Rose Bowl. Rose Bowl always seems to be a good game. Perfect time in the day, perfect setting.
Time. And you want to know something? Anybody that gets to the Rose Bowl,
like you have,
it's a great game to be at. And also, any team that gets to it. This is never a game where the teams mail it in.
Well,
and you know how we've talked about those BCS or bust BCS title or bust situations? If you're a Pac-12 or a Big Ten team with ties to that tradition, and you get there instead of going to the title game, you never not show up.
Right.
You never lay an egg. You come and you bring everything you had. And both of those teams brought everything they had. And that's why that was such a good football game to watch.
Good Rose Bowl. Actually, some defense played in that game. As far as the Fiesta Bowl...
Oh, you just ended all the defense.
Right. Central Florida 52, Baylor 42. What a nice year for Central Florida. Only lost to South Carolina, and that was a very close game, by the way. They could have went undefeated. Baylor.
I mean, they wouldn't have had a say in the national title discussion, even undefeated, because again, like Rutgers and like Louisville, actually, like Louisville, they had nobody on their schedule.
When we watched Baylor play Oklahoma, we thought their defense could be underrated. Yeah. Well, they got shredded in this game.
Banged up. They're beat. They limped through the back end of the year through injuries. Maybe they were exposed a little bit, but I think the injuries had a lot to do with this on defense, and you know they were all kinds of beat up.
Yeah.
But they did get shredded. Bortles looked terrific in this game, and certainly looks like a kid that not only can play on Sunday, but looks like he's going to have a very good career. He's big, he's physical, he's athletic. Reminds you very much as far as size and stature and athletic ability of Flacco and Roethlisberger.
Absolutely, yes.
Can make every throw. Has played a lot of quarterback on the college level. This kid's got a lot of potential. Level of competition was good enough. He's played some big-time competition. I wouldn't have any qualms if I'm in the top 5 about drafting Blake Bortles. I would be very confident that he's going to have success at this level.
Excellent year for Central Florida. Overall, a nice year for Baylor. They go into a new stadium. Overall, a nice year. Like you said, they were limping home at the end of the year.
The program is certainly headed in the right direction. New stadium, coach locked up for a long time, more big-time recruits. I like the direction of the Baylor Bears within the Big 12.
I agree. So that was your Fiesta Bowl. Sugar Bowl, we talked about it a little bit. Oklahoma 45, Alabama 31.
Foul, Alabama.
Alabama.
They're the best team in the country, and they didn't show up for this game.
Didn't show up.
TJ Yeldon, still waiting. I'm still waiting for him to show up. He was unfocused, unready to play, put the ball on the turf twice. A.J. McCarron, he showed up to play, but he didn't play well. No. Nobody on that Alabama field really played with focus or well. This is an offensive line that all year had given up 10 sacks.
Right.
After the first game of the year, they had given up 6 sacks in the next 12 games.
No, yeah.
Oklahoma shows up and gets 7.
Yeah.
They were unfocused and unready to play. I knew it was going to happen because once a team like this is not in the national title game, which they thought was their birthright, and it looked like where they were headed, they come into these bowl games as flat as a pancake. And I would have bet my house on OU. And you know I'm not a fan of Bob Stoops or OU because I think if there's a team that comes up small more than them, I'm hard-pressed to find them.
Let me throw Bob Stoops a bone here. They did finish the season well. They won at Kansas State, won at Oklahoma State, and beat Alabama here. They did finish...
And they showed up ready to play this football game.
And the quarterback looked totally different than the beginning of the season.
If you remember, he won the job from the Belldozer in fall practice.
And then looked bad.
And then you remember how much trouble they had against West Virginia and they escaped.
Struggled to win. He looks like a different guy now.
And then, basically, it was a situation where those two went back and forth with that quarterback job, and quarterback play was a problem for them all year long. He looked like they thought he was going to look early in the year. After the end, when you get to this late in the season, freshmen are no longer freshmen.
Right.
The future is bright at the quarterback position anyway for the Oklahoma Sooners.
So I will throw Bob Stoops a bone here. I picked on him as well. They did finish the season very nicely. Terrible into the season for Alabama. Like you said, they were very flat in this game. So that was your Sugar Bowl. As far as the Cotton Bowl,
this was a great game.
Missouri beat Oklahoma State in another shootout, 41-31. Missouri had
defense optional.
Missouri had one heck of a year as well. The future is bright there as well.
Scored 24 fourth quarter points in this one. to come back. And this was a game where defense...
Gus Johnson, I believe, was he screaming?
Gus was screaming late.
Yes, he was.
Because early there wasn't that much to scream
he was
about.
Screaming late, yes.
You know, this was one of those games with two teams with pretty darn good defenses. You know, or we know how badly Auburn chewed up the Missouri defense in the SEC title game. But generally, all year long, both of these teams have had terrific defenses. Their offenses have gotten better and better as the season has gone on, and both had balanced offenses. For the first 3 quarters of this game, the defenses were the order of the day. All of a sudden, in the fourth quarter, these two teams start going down the field on each other like it's nobody's business.
Right.
Missouri, with 24 fourth-quarter points, finds a way to win what was a terrific game, and a game I knew was going to be a lot of fun.
You like the Cotton Bowl historically.
Historically, I like it. And I liked this matchup this year. And I enjoyed this matchup.
Missouri had one heck of a year as well, and their future is bright. We love the young quarterback who got a little playing time.
Matty Moore. Hey, you get play as a freshman.
Right.
You know, you got a lot of play as a freshman. You know, now as a sophomore, he steps in. He's played big games.
No, absolutely.
The future is very bright there. He sticks around a couple of years. Here's a guy who's highly recruited. Again, like Manziel, he's a little short. But you have to watch him for his NFL prospects. By the time he comes out, he's going to have played a lot of football.
So a really nice year for Missouri. A little disappointing into Oklahoma State season. They lose at home to Oklahoma, then they lose the bowl game.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, I expect...
But they have a program there.
Right.
In Stillwater, you know, at T. Boone Pickens State University.
Right.
They really do have a football program. They're in the top 10 every year.
Absolutely. As far as the Orange Bowl, yet another shootout. Basically, every game I'm looking at, shootout. Both teams are over 30 points in every single one of them. We knew this would be a shootout. No defense here. Clemson beats Ohio State 40-35. These two teams going forward, and I know I'm beating a dead horse here, they have to get more defense. They have to get more physical. If Clemson wants to get to that next level, and they lose a ton on offense, by the way, but they seem to always replace everyone on offense.
Watkins, your best receiver, and your quarterback go, and I can't imagine what else. I think about 7 or 8 of their starters.
Now, they do a good job replacing guys on offense, but
got to get somebody to stop people.
They have to get some sort of defense. They're never going to get to that next level if they have a defense like this. Their defense is horrendous. You know what? The same thing with Ohio State.
I'll tell you something about Ohio State.
Hill is coming back.
The group that was not bowl eligible last year was better than this group.
No, you're right about that. Absolutely.
And I told you that all year long. And a lot of people scoffed at me when I said this. No. I says, this group this year is not as good as the group last year. They don't play as much defense, and they're a little inconsistent. Well, Michigan State exposed them, beat them in a tough Big Ten championship game. And then I kind of knew once it was in a Rose Bowl or a BCS title game that Ohio State would come out a little flat and fall short. I can't say they actually came out flat. They just got beat in a shootout. But I had a feeling they would lose.
So many of these big teams, in order to get to the next level, have to improve on defense. I mean, Clemson, Ohio State,
Texas A&M.
State, Texas A&M.
Oklahoma State's defense is actually very strong.
Baylor, another one.
Baylor, I'll give you.
The list goes on. Arizona State, Oregon, we've talked about repeatedly. So many of these teams have to get better defensively. They have to improve defensively. You cannot let teams walk up and down the field on you.
No question about it.
It's just too easy.
And if you can get a defensive presence to go with your offense, you're going to be pretty tough to stop because you are in the minority.
You just need a few stops, a turnover here or there. You don't have to stop them on. You don't have to have a Michigan State defense. You need just a few stops in the game. These teams can't get any stops, especially at the end of the game. How many times did the team score at the end of these games?
You watch these games, and some of them are quiet for 3 quarters.
And then all of a sudden,
between the two teams, they're scoring 40 points plus in the fourth quarter.
Every one of these games, both teams are over 30 points. It's ridiculous. It's offense, offense, offense.
Some of it has to do with the pacing of college football today. These offenses run so many plays,
and the rules,
and each team gets so many possessions that sometimes, not always, because I'm not going to completely exonerate them, but some of it's deceiving. In college football, with the clock stopping on every first down, with the tempo that some of these teams run their offenses at, the realities are that you're having 12, 13, 14 drives a game for some of these offenses, you're going to put up points.
And
I'll give you an NBA analogy. You know, and this year aside, let's go back and look at last year's Denver Nuggets, who improved leaps and bounds in the regular season over where they had been for the last few years. They were still the same team offensively. They still rebounded the same way. Defense was where their improvement came. But you looked at their points allowed, and you said, this isn't that good of a team.
Right.
They're in the bottom third in points allowed.
Right.
But then when you went and dug deeper into the efficiency stats on defense, you saw that they were upper middle of the pack. The points per game stats deceiving because of the tempo with which the Denver Nuggets played offense. That's a lot of what happens in college football. The pace of some of these offenses forces these defenses to
and all the rules are for the offense. They don't let you do much.
Well, that's a given on any level.
They don't let you do much. I mean, even with, you know what I wish they would start calling more, even in the NFL, these obvious pick plays in the NFL where these receivers are wiping out the defensive backs and they're not calling when they're crisscrossing on the routes. You got to start giving something back to the defense.
It's not a pick play, it's a rub.
A rub, right. I call it a pick, you call
it. It's a pick play when they call it.
Right, which they very rarely do.
When they don't call the offensive pass interference, it's a rub route.
Absolutely. So that was your bowl season. Any other bowls that stick out to you? Those were kind of the major ones.
No, you hit the nail on the proverbial head. I mean, you did skip games like the GoDaddy Bowl, the Bell Helicopter Bowl, and things like that. And I thank you very much for that.
Now, the final poll was released today. Florida State 1, Auburn 2, Michigan State 3, South Carolina 4.
But they don't have there's no shirt and no hat.
They did finish 4, though. Missouri 5, Oklahoma 6. That's hard to believe. Alabama, disappointing 7, you'd have to say. Clemson 8, Oregon 9. Both of those teams have to improve on defense. And Central Florida finished the year 10th. Very impressive for Central Florida.
Absolutely, and that'll help in recruiting. And George O'Leary is a damn good head football coach.
Could have been the coach of Notre Dame.
And I'm going to help him tweak my resume. I'm going to help tweak my resume.
By the way, I went and looked for the early top 10 for next year. Wow. This is the very early next year top 10. Here it is. I think this was ESPN's top 10 for next year already.
This didn't waste any time.
No, absolutely not. 10, they got LSU. 9, Ohio State. 8, Oklahoma. 7, UCLA. 6, Michigan State. 5, Auburn. 4, Stanford. 3, Oregon. Here we go again with them. Happy to see the quarterback is coming back. He's not ready for the NFL. 2, Alabama. 1, Florida State. The usual suspects. Here we go again.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right back where we started.
Right back where we started.
But this time we got a playoff.
No, absolutely. So you could have, you're going to have 4 teams now, much more exciting.
Which means 5 and 6 will be bitching.
Right. You could be sure.
But I mean, that's kind of the way it is. I've always said when you have a playoff, you have a tournament. All it does is slide the teams complaining further down. Once you've slid it far enough that the teams complaining don't have a realistic chance at the championship, that's when you got your playoff at the right side.
Absolutely, and I will miss college football. I hate to see it go. It is such a short
But the good news is in a couple of months the weather will be warm.
There you go. But college football is such a short season. I mean, football in general, you realize in a few more weeks, no more football at all? I mean, no more football at all. To me, there's 2 seasons.
Unlike the interminable NBA season.
Yes.
Where I think they take 2 weeks off and they start training camp again.
Right. To me, there's 2 seasons. There's football season.
There's everything else.
And waiting for football season.
I like it. Move to the South.
So that is the college football wrap-up. We're right on schedule, by the way. I figured we'd wrap this up in a half hour. We're already right around the hour already. We got to get your feelings on the NFL games transitioning as we have been known to do. We're transitioning now into the NFL
Look at us. I love it. We're doing a transition, guys. It's 2 for 1 here.
Right. We're going right into the transition. So let me get you real quick on the games this week. First game up, Seattle at home, -8.5 against New Orleans. New Orleans off the big win against Philadelphia where they kicked the last-second field goal. Of course, Seattle already beat the Saints this year, 34-7, drubbed them out there in Seattle. Harvin, from what I'm hearing, could play this week for Seattle. That would be a big lift if they get him out there. He's a deep threat. They're already a receiver down. They don't have him. They're 2 receivers down. Like to see Harvin in the lineup for Seattle. Gives him a deep threat. I love Seattle's team. They already drubbed New Orleans once. I appreciate what New Orleans did last week in Philadelphia.
I was surprised by what they did in Philadelphia.
I don't think they can go to Seattle and get it done. Seattle bombed them already once. I don't know if it's going to be that much of a beating this time around. The game might be a little closer. I still say Seattle is too much of a handful at home. Those fans are just rabid. They're dying for a winner. They're hungry for a winner. They're not going to let Seattle lose this game. I don't like the Saints on the road, even though they did win last week. I like Seattle here to win by 10 points and cover the 8.5 points.
I think this game's going to be a lot closer than the number. I don't think New Orleans can win this game. And, you know, Seattle showed. We know how tough Seattle is at home. Seattle showed you what they can do against New Orleans in their building. They dominated New Orleans when New Orleans came to Seattle.
34-7.
I don't think it's going to be an outcome like that this time around.
I agree. It'll be closer.
You know, Brees, you know, we've also talked about the fact that New Orleans is not the same outdoors. And while they did enough to win against Philadelphia outdoors in Philly last week, it was their defense that did a lot of the winning in that game, not their offense.
How good was Lewis, who used to be on my Steelers, who I loved? He did a great job before he went out of the game covering Jackson in that game.
Absolutely. And Deshaun Jackson was a non-factor. So they've made some leaps and strides. They've made some real strides on defense this year under Rob Ryan.
He's done a nice job. You got to give him the wild man credit.
Right. All of a sudden, they get pass rush, and that's where it all starts. They're back 4 covers. They're fairly stout against the run. Is it a great elite level defense in this league? No,
it's better.
But it's an upper middle or middle type defense. Certainly one good enough that in conjunction with that offense, you could win a lot of games. New Orleans seemed to solve the problem at left tackle. Teron Armstead played much better last week against a pretty tough Philadelphia Eagles pass rush. Not only is Trent Cole usually going to be rushing over Teron Armstead, they also move a lot of people around. You never know who's going to be coming. The offensive line as a group did a good job of picking up blitzes, did a good job with their assignments. If that offensive line can stay stout, now New Orleans can play. It allows Drew Brees to do things. It allows that running game to get going, and we saw that last week. I know running against Seattle is not necessarily easy. Holding off their pass rush is not necessarily easy. But they've solved the gaping hole in the Achilles heel of that offense, at least for 1 week, and that was the offensive line. The defense we've talked about. I think that this is a pretty close game between 2 pretty closely matched teams. I just think that outdoors, at home, Seattle, they're better on defense. They have a better running game. While New Orleans' passing game is more prolific, it's also more mistake-prone outdoors on the road. Russell Wilson will not turn over the football. Drew Brees will turn it over twice. That'll be the difference in this game. I think it'll be closer than people think. And I think while New Orleans won't win this game, they will cover that big 8.5.
So you like New Orleans to cover but not win. I say Seattle wins by 10. What are you hearing about Harvin? I heard he could play this.
I've heard he could, but early in the week I heard no. Now I've heard maybe.
Right, and remember, he's only played 1 game this year. Looked good doing it, but then we haven't seen him since.
But that'd make a huge difference. The impact that he can have in the slot.
Because they're already down
and doing some of those little guy things that he does.
Right.
That could help a lot. He functions real well in space. See, but they've overcome being down receivers all year.
They have.
And they just keep coming, next guy up, next guy up.
Pete Carroll's done a tremendous job with that. Even in the secondary, they had all sorts of guys out, done a great job with their defensive backs and their safeties. I think Seattle being at home, I think it's just going to be too much for New Orleans. I think Seattle is the most complete team in the NFL. I think they're the best team right now.
2 running backs, young stud quarterback, a deep, talented group of receivers. None of them is necessarily a superstar, but they're deep and talented and all do different things well. The offensive line has got healthy and come together.
Defense is physical.
Defense is physical. They're physical in their secondary. They're fast and athletic. And they turn over the football and they get after the quarterback. They are the most complete team in the NFC.
And they don't lose at home.
Right.
They don't lose at home. They will not lose here.
I don't think they'll lose here either, but I don't think they'll cover that big number.
We both like Seattle. I like them a little bigger than you do.
You absolutely do.
Okay, game number 2 on Saturday night. The New England Patriots are -7.5 against the Indianapolis Colts. Colts with the big rally against the Chiefs last week with a just unbelievable comeback.
I have to tell you, I was watching that
another game with no defense, of course.
I said to somebody at halftime, I said, this game is over. And they're like, why? I said, well, look at what Indy would have to do to win this game.
Yeah.
They can't give up anything more than a field goal in the entire second half, and they're probably going to get 5 possessions, which means in order to win the game, they'd probably have to go 5 for 5, scoring all touchdowns to win this football game.
Right.
I said so. Unless turnovers start to happen and all kinds of weird things start to happen, Indy's going to be hard pressed to win this game. So what happens? The turnovers start to happen. The Chiefs' offense really bogs down.
Yeah.
A lot of 3 and outs. They're giving the ball back fast. A little dumb luck with the fumble bouncing right into Andrew Luck's hands.
Yeah, where he runs it in. Yeah.
You know, getting some quick drives and taking off some big chunks of yardage. And Andrew Luck putting a team on his shoulders after he had a crappy first half and put him in a big hole, and he brings them back to victory.
Chiefs, very disappointing on defense this
Well,
year.
you know what it was? First half of the year, they were very good on defense as the offense started to find its way.
They became an offensive team.
As injuries started to mount on that defense, their lack of depth on defense showed up. When they could no longer get after the quarterback, their warts were exposed, and they gave up points in bunches, and they became an offensive team that never seemed to be able to stop anybody and never got that big stop at the back end of the year. That's why they're home, and that's why Indy is in New England.
Now, as far as this particular game, New England's got all sorts of injuries themselves. No Gronkowski, 2 defensive linemen out, the linebacker out. New England, though, they're another one of these teams like Seattle.
Yeah, Brandon Spikes just goes on the on IR.
But they keep plugging guys in. They seem to always find a way, New England. Now, of course, Indianapolis, Wayne is out. That's been a big loss for them.
Big out.
I like New England in this game. They're home. They're off a bye week. And Indianapolis gives up too many points to me. And I never like bad defenses on the road. I've been consistent with that. So I'm going to take the Patriots here, minus 7.5. They will find a way to get through this game and cover. Indianapolis does not have the defense to win a road game like this. I like the Patriots, minus 7.5.
Not only do they not have the defense to win this game, they don't have the running game to win this game.
Right.
They are a one-dimensional, unbalanced football team who really, against quality defenses, cannot run the football.
They've beaten some good teams this year.
Well, that's where I give them credit. When
Right.
you looked at that matchup, and I picked Indy last week. I didn't think it was going to turn out like it did.
Right, I did too.
But I did begrudgingly. It was one of those games I looked at and I said, I don't know who's going to win. I very begrudgingly picked Indy.
Yeah.
Because I thought they turned it around with the victory of the Chiefs and then moving forward. You know, but if you remember leading up to that Chiefs game, I picked the Chiefs in that game because there was nothing in the regular season. Because
Right.
there was nothing to make you believe at that point that Indy could win a game.
Right.
You know, they were getting blown out by halftime and they'd limp back in but never really make a game of it. Well, that being said, you know, when you look at Indy, I did pick them, as I said, begrudgingly last week, but I wasn't enamored by them, and my pick of Indy was more of an indictment on where Kansas City was.
Right.
Not healthy, banged up, they lack depth. They have frontline talent, but when you get to their second unit guys on defense, you have real issues. And that's why Kansas City's not here and Indy is. Now, you look at Indy, they have to go on the road. Conditions could be affected. At the very least, it's going to be cold.
Yes.
But I don't know if there's going to be any elements, but it will be cold. And Indy's one of these indoor, warm weather teams.
Yeah.
They chuck it and duck it. They'd like to run it more. They just can't.
Right.
Because their offensive line stinks. And Trent Richardson is soft as a grape.
Yeah. How bad has he been as a pro?
He really had. And he was even horrible in that game. Once he put the ball on the turf, we never saw him again. It was for Dominic Brown. That was it.
That was it.
But if they, I don't think that there's a way that they can go into New England and throw it 50 times and win. And as you said, they don't run the ball real well. They're not physical. They're one-dimensional. They seem to get down big all the time. You get down big to New England, they're not letting you back in. You can't run the ball. You don't play particularly good defense. New England, even despite all their issues as far as injuries, they find a way to exploit clear and obvious weaknesses. Indy has many clear and obvious weaknesses. For that reason, that coupled with being at home in the cold, I'm with you. New England finds a way to cover this game. It'll be entertaining, but New England will pull away late.
So we're in lockstep. We agree New England wins and covers the spread.
Absolutely.
All right, to the Sunday games, the San Francisco 49ers are minus.
Controversy abounds in this one. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
San Francisco, in what capacity are you talking
Oh,
about?
the favorite son of the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina, Ric Flair, was always a Carolina Panthers fan.
Right. And you get a wrestling thing.
I had to get it in here. Just because, even though he's a wrestler, he is like the favorite son of Charlotte.
Right.
You have Cam Newton, you have all those NASCAR drivers that live there.
Ric Flair.
You ask everybody who the most famous celebrity athlete is in Charlotte, it's Ric Flair.
Okay, so Ric Flair is...
So basically what had gone on is, they play Ric Flair doing woo on the scoreboard. He was a Panthers season ticket holder.
Right.
He was going to make a big speech in the locker room. What does he do before Sunday's game with San Francisco and Green Bay?
Was he in the San Francisco locker room?
He was in the San Francisco locker room.
I did read that, yeah.
So now the Carolina Panthers, led by Steve Smith, have disowned Ric Flair.
So Ric Flair is out.
So now he's taken San Francisco all the way, and I hear he might just be in the 49ers locker room giving him one of those inspirational Nature Boy speeches.
I did read that. I did not connect the dots to the Carolina connection, but I did read he was in the San Francisco.
Charlotte's favorite son, baby.
You're right about that.
Every time he goes out to dinner, somebody other than him picks up the check.
Right, I got you. So San Francisco on the road, -2 at Carolina. San Francisco beats Green Bay this past weekend. That was a very exciting game as well. Steve Smith, I'm guessing, will play this week.
Will play. They say he's at about 60-70%.
Right.
So he's going to play, but how much of a factor is he? It's one of those things where you single cover him and force him to beat single coverage. If he beats it, then you tilt the coverage towards him, but make him beat you first. And if that's the case, I'm not confident that the rest of these Carolina Panthers receivers can get open, because Steve Smith is the straw that stirs the drink when it comes to the Carolina passing.
So we'll keep an eye on that injury. Carolina won 10-9 at San Francisco, but that was without Crabtree. San Francisco did not have Crabtree in that game. He makes
they weren't playing well at the time. Remember how much San Francisco was struggling.
Couldn't move the ball, couldn't pass it, couldn't
There
do
was
anything.
no Crabtree. I believe Aldon Smith was still serving his suspension, if I'm not mistaken.
They had a bunch of guys out. They couldn't move the ball from here to there. That was a perfect time for Carolina to play him. This time will be different. Crabtree is in the lineup. You mentioned Steve Smith being hurt. I know the game's in Carolina. I don't want to shortchange him. I like their defense. I like what they've done this year. I think San Francisco is the second best team in the NFC. I want to see a San Francisco-Seattle championship game.
I think you're probably going to get one.
I hope so. I think San Francisco wins this game. I think it'll be close, but I think they pull it out. I think Crabtree is the difference this time around. I like San Francisco -2.
I like the way you think. I knew there was a reason I like working with you. You're a pretty smart fella. Sometimes in the NFL, it's about getting healthy at the right time and getting hot at the right time. San Francisco in the middle of the year, no Aldon Smith, bunch of injuries on defense. They couldn't get after the quarterback.
Couldn't move the ball at all.
And that changed a lot. Like you said, all the weapons on the outside. The only guy that was healthy was Anquan Bolden. There was no Vernon Davis, no Michael Crabtree. They were even having some troubles on the offensive line, and Kaepernick was having his struggles. Well, all of a sudden, healthy Crabtree, who's been ready to roll and playing well. That makes Bolden better. Vernon Davis back and healthy. You got the two-headed running back attack. Kaepernick functioning as he did late last year on their playoff run. And now on defense, you got Aldon Smith. You got Justin Smith. Because you need both of those guys.
Absolutely.
With only one of them, they can't rush the passer. And then they found the third rusher in Ahmad Brooks. And they're playing real good defense. When they get up after the quarterback, the sins of that secondary get hidden, because you're not going to tell me that's a great secondary.
No.
All apologies to what anybody else thinks. When there's no pass rush, that secondary gets eaten up. Look at last year's playoff run, where their defense didn't do a thing. Their offense got them to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
Their defense didn't make very many stops.
No.
With that being said, we've talked about everything. San Francisco's hitting stride at the right time, playing their best football in January. They're the healthiest they've been all year in January. The offense is clicking. The defense is stout against the run and the pass. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Carolina's banged up. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah.
Steve Smith,
no, that's a big
at
injury.
60%, changes that entire offense and makes them very one-dimensional. both teams are very strong on defense, and I think the defenses are a wash.
Yeah.
If anything, the underrated Carolina secondary may be a little better than that San Francisco secondary, but I'll call the defenses a wash. I think the San Francisco offense is a little bit more explosive than the Carolina offense. They got Ric Flair in their corner,
Right.
and that's the difference. And with a small number like 2, I like San Francisco to win and cover in what's going to be a very close game. And unlike a lot of the games that we saw last weekend in Wild Card and all those college football games, this is not going to be a lot of fireworks. This is going to be close to the vest.
Hard hitting.
17-14, 21-17.
Slug it out.
Something like that. It's going to be physical, but I think San Francisco is going to make a couple more plays on offense, and at the end they'll go, woo, and win.
So San Francisco, we agree. San Francisco goes into Carolina and wins this game.
Yes, we do.
I'll tell you, that would set up a tremendous matchup, San Francisco and Seattle. I know I'm getting ahead of myself.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
No, because
we don't have time to preview that. We'll be here all night. I'll have to stay overnight.
And that just jinxes everything. I'll just curse the whole game. You won't get either team in there.
That's it.
But I'll tell you, San Francisco, Seattle, that is a tasty matchup. Okay.
And that's going to have a little bit of everything.
Absolutely.
If that's what we get,
coaches don't like each other. Oh, you got
that will have moments of defense. That will have moments of offense.
Crowd,
that's not going to be one of those 17-13, but it's also not going to be one of those 35-31. That's going to be something solid in the 20s. Each defense is going to make huge stands and big plays, and I guarantee you these defenses will stop each other on 3rd and 4th and shorts. Each of these offenses would make big plays. It's one of those football games where you get everything, and it becomes one for the ages.
Absolutely. All right, the final game on Sunday, the Denver Broncos at home, -9.5 against the San Diego Chargers. They split the season series.
Superchargers.
The Chargers, who, by the way, and we haven't talked about this, should not be in the playoffs. So, by the way, my Steelers should have made the playoffs. We were robbed. We should have been in the playoffs. We got bamboozled.
But the league apologized to you. That which should make I always like that when the league comes out with that statement on Tuesday after they've watched all the tapes of all the games, which is what they're supposed to do. And they say, the officials were wrong. Well, what does that do for us?
First of all, the Kansas City kicker should have made the first field goal. He should have made that. Then he should have gotten a second try. And then how about when San Diego ran the fake punt? Not only did they not give him the fumble that Kansas City ran back for a touchdown, they gave him a first down.
Yeah.
So everything went San Diego's way, and my Steelers got bamboozled. So the Chargers make the playoffs, and what do? They go into Cincinnati, and you love the Bengals this year.
Yeah.
You had the Bengals as the team coming out of the AFC, if I do remember.
Well, they're out of the AFC, all right.
Cincinnati,
about 3 weeks early, but they're out.
Cincinnati couldn't have played a worse home game in the history of home games.
4 turnovers.
Dalton was awful. Fumbles, interceptions. They played a miserable game.
4 turnovers.
4 turnovers. They have the one where they're going in for the touchdown. Dalton falls on his face and fumbles. Then the interceptions.
Then A.J. Green... Well, then the one good pass that Dalton makes, A.J. Green, it has it drop right in his lap, and he drops the football.
I couldn't believe how atrocious Cincinnati played in that game. Awful.
But let's give San Diego a lot of credit.
San Diego's always had talent. They're frenetic.
And here's the thing
They're
about
schizophrenic.
You know, when you watch them play against the Chiefs' second stringers, and backdoor their way in the playoffs, as you said, they really didn't deserve to be there.
Should have lost that game.
But with that being said, you watch that game. San Diego's got its starters out there, has a playoff berth on the line to play for, and they're losing this whole game to Chase Daniel and a bunch of second stringers for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
So you watch that game, they get some help, they find a way to win, and now they're in the playoffs. Is there anything that makes you believe that that team could go on the road and win a playoff game?
No, Cincinnati's got a good, solid defense. They're undefeated at home. You figure, all right, Cincinnati's going to take care of business here. No.
So now San Diego goes in, and I know they very quietly have done a lot of nice things. Not only the resurrection of Phillip Rivers.
They have talent.
Ken Wisenhunt doing a great job designing an offense from scratch for Phillip Rivers. Their offensive line, which was horrible coming into the year, has improved in leaps and bounds and looks like one of the best offensive lines left in the playoffs.
Right.
They found a running game. They have balance. They now have an athletic defense that gets after the quarterback.
They can do some things on defense.
They can really do some things.
They have talent.
That if you haven't watched over the last 6 weeks, because the first 10 weeks, a lot of this stuff wasn't there. It's now there. I think they're a very, very dangerous football team. And, you know, they're going into Denver, division matchup. These two teams have split in season.
Both teams won on the opposing field.
I'm not enamored with Denver. I don't like their defense.
Welker is back. Von Miller out.
Right. They don't get after the quarterback, and Von Miller's gone. They're athletic defensively, but it doesn't necessarily translate into stops or great success. And I thought this defense was going to grow as the year's gone on.
Do I hear a possible upset here?
Yeah, you do. Offensively,
I'd love to see it, but
offensively, I mean, I know Denver chucks and ducks it all over the place.
Right.
But the calendar's now flipped to January. Peyton's going to have to deal with cold and blustery elements on his home field of Denver. Both of these teams will run the ball and throw the ball. I just think in what is a very intriguing matchup, you've got one of these teams that has very quietly gotten better as the year's gone on. They got a lot of guys back late in the year. They have healthy, fresh legs versus a team that I won't say has limped its way home, but is far from an elite team. I am going to pick San Diego to not only cover the 9.5, the outright upset.
Wow, and that would be a huge, huge upset. Now, I would love to see it because if there's one team I don't want to win or get to the Super Bowl, it's Denver. I do not want Denver in the Super Bowl. I don't want Peyton Manning back in the Super Bowl.
I don't think you have to worry about it.
I am worried, though, because I don't know who in the AFC is going to beat them. I got to go the other way here. I am going to take Denver here. I cannot trust San Diego. They're too up and down for me. One great game, one bad game. And you're expecting San Diego to now win again in Denver. I don't know if they're capable of doing that. They're so strange, San Diego. I'd love to see
I'll give you something to think about.
I'd love to see it.
If there's anybody that knows Peyton Manning and his tendencies since coming to Denver, it's San Diego's head coach, Mike McCoy, who was his offensive coordinator last year.
I would
and that helps.
Love to see San Diego win this game. I will be rooting for San Diego. I'm picking Denver. I say Denver wins by 14 points.
Supercharger.
Too much offense. Wes Welker back. I don't trust San Diego. I'm rooting heavy against Denver, against whoever they play. I don't want them to win the Super Bowl. I don't even want them in the Super Bowl. It's my worst nightmare. Peyton Manning back in the Super Bowl again. I can't take it.
Get blown out by 3 touchdowns?
I can't take it again. But I think they have enough to beat the Chargers. I think they win by 14 points. We will disagree on that, but I will agree with you on this. I want San Diego to win this game.
Excellent, man. I'll tell you, we have some agreement, some disagreement. I think we're going to have a fun divisional round weekend. Wild card weekend was terrific.
Very good.
And had some classic games. You know, again, what New Orleans did in the elements against Philadelphia impressed me. Offensively, they did a nice job. They pounded the rock on an Eagles defense that's really gotten better the back half of the year.
Yeah.
That's been stout. They were able to they ran the ball down the Eagles' throats. They were able, after a shaky start from Breeze, to get things right and do enough in the passing game. They held up well on the offensive line, and they did it in the elements. So I was impressed by New Orleans and what they did.
You had to be.
You had to be impressed with what San Diego did.
Absolutely.
Cincinnati,
awful.
3 years in a row, you make the playoffs, you go out, you got to win a game. They've got to look at some changes there, whether it's Marvin Lewis, Andy Dalton, or some combination thereof. There's some things they have to consider.
Well, they may lose the offensive coordinator.
That might be a blessing, going another direction with that offense.
Right. Sometimes
I know a lot of people have thought that Jay Gruden's done a great job.
He's very conservative.
Well, that's what a lot of, I think almost too much so.
Right.
And it seems to hurt that offense.
I don't think he needs to be, but he always is.
Right. And I don't know if that's Marvin Lewis or Jay Gruden.
You don't know who's got the final say.
But again, you know, something has to give. You can't keep getting to this place and stopping.
No.
And in an AFC right now that is devoid of great teams, it was there for the taking for Cincinnati.
And they did have a couple guys out on defense, 2 of their better defensive guys.
But Geno Atkins and Leon Hall have been out for now almost half the season.
I want to give them
and you're still in the top 5 in both run defense, pass defense, and points allowed.
You know what they need? A compliment to Green. He's so much of the offense. If you take him away, they're kind of lost where to go.
I thought Marvin Jones had a big game.
Do you see him as a big compliment to A.J. Green?
It's a pretty good year. Go take a look at it.
Okay.
I like their weapons. I don't think their weapons are their problem. I think it's either the quarterback or the scheme or both.
Because sometimes
you got
they
to
don't
decide
score.
what you are.
On the road, they were 3-5 this year. They didn't score a lot of points. I mean, there's something going on with that offense. Yeah, Dalton's got to get a lot of the blame. You want to say the coach and the offensive coordinator. I'd like them to get another receiver. If you like Jones, and we all love
You never have enough receivers.
Right, maybe
you're throwing them out there.
Get a third receiver there. I think they need another receiver, to me, personally.
I know they have the 2 tight ends. They got maybe another back, too. If you're not convinced that Green Ellis is a good complement for Giovanni Bernard.
Right.
But there's some things to figure out. You know, Kansas City, what they have to do, we know they have frontline talent. We knew they had frontline talent last year when they were tied for the lead in Pro Bowl nominations on a 2-win team. So frontline talent's there. They need depth. Real depth. And then maybe they'll be able to advance in the postseason. Because that was a bad loss for them, and I attribute a lot of it to lack of quality depth. Being shallow all over the place and not having the next man up that can step in and make plays, particularly on defense. Offensively, they have a few of those guys, and they also have to get some more receivers, Kansas City. And then I guess finally, Green Bay, San Francisco, which was a great game.
Yeah.
Green Bay needs some quality defensive play.
They didn't play. Matthews was out. They need more defensive guys.
They need more defensive guys.
They're offensive heavy.
They are very offensive heavy. And again, that's what happens when you pay the quarterback $20 million.
And you got the receivers.
They got a bevy of receivers. They got a back. That offense is there. And the offensive line has improved a lot.
Yeah.
So their focus really has to be all over that defense, getting some playmakers. But boy, it was a great wild card round. And a great wild card weekend. If the divisional round weekend can measure up for that, we got some fun in store for us.
No, absolutely. So we're right on schedule.
As usual.
Right on schedule. Once we get started, there's no stopping. It's like a runaway train.
You know what it is? It's 2 guys that genuinely like each other, enjoy each other's company, love to talk sports with each other, and no matter how much we say one isn't feeling good, the other isn't feeling good, we got to hurry. We can't hurry.
No.
We enjoy doing this. We love coming to you every week. We love doing it with each other. We're highly opinionated, highly passionate. We get excited. So, you know, for better or worse, this is what you get from us.
Right.
You get a lot of information that you, in a way, you may not get anywhere else, but this is what we're going to give you because we like what we're doing. We enjoy doing it, and that makes it easy. I guarantee you, if we didn't like doing this, we'd be done in a half hour without a problem.
Absolutely. So thanks to Joe, as always, for stopping by. Joe will be back with us next Tuesday as we preview the championship games in both the AFC and the NFC.
That we may be able to get done in an hour because it's only 2 games.
Right, maybe.
I didn't promise you anything.
All right, now Joe is going to take you home because I really am losing my voice here. So I will talk to you guys soon. Joe, tell them where they can find you.
Absolutely. You can find me Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 Eastern Time, the Sports Byline Broadcast Network. We air all over Sirius Satellite Radio. If you don't have a Sirius or XM radio, consult the website, which is www.sportsbyline, spelled BYLINE.com, for a local affiliate in your area. Channel 11 WPIX Morning News, mornings, usually 6:45 Eastern Time. Anytime there's a major sports story, you'll probably find me on there. Again, it's truly a pleasure coming into your homes and into your lives each and every week to talk sports. Love doing it with Mike. We will catch you next week.
Talk to you soon. Take care.